questions, reactions. I love that Zoom is super like enhanced now, but the voice that says recording in progress sounds like every like evil robot from the 80s. It's like it's not very good artificial intelligence on that voice. Sorry, Zoom, if you're listening. But the more 2A we can keep this, the better. So if you have questions, comments, you want me to go faster, you want me to go slower, if I'm tanking badly, just let me know. Second, any clarifying questions, I'll try and take as they come. But if there are bigger picture questions, I'll try and save those at the end. I have a lot of slides. I'm sending a PDF of these as a handout as soon as I'm done. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and dive right into this. I had more fun naming this. I wish I'd have known about that one study, which not a lot of people say. I'm super nerdy about science, and I feel like I do say that all the time. And I'm like, wait, we're in a position to tell you about that one study. I think that most of us kind of know about like the big studies. But what about that one where like, this would be so helpful? That's really the goal. And that's what I'm going to try and review. Big thank you to Crystal, Kale, and Krista for their role in both inviting me and having this happen. Thanks to all of you for doing what you do. What I said I would cover are these key hidden treasures in the scientific literature with relevance to prevention and intervention. And before I get started, I just want to say that I do think that I made fun of the Zoom recording in progress voice, but Zoom is learning. Zoom is gaining emotional intelligence. I genuinely believe this. In May, I was asked to do a presentation for Louisiana for a statewide event. And in the Zoom link they sent me, it said, which is how I feel all the time now. I was like, wow, Zoom, you get me. That's amazing. And I'm like, but that's a fluke. Nope, keeps happening. Here was Syracuse in August. Here was Oklahoma. So I just want to do a shout out to Zoom. I also want to say, I know this is a virtual summit. Here are the top 5 ways to make this feel like it's an in-person event. Because I kind of miss in-person events. Number 5, steal pens from your own house and pretend they're giveaways from the exhibitor's booth. I've been walking around with these highlighters. I'm pretty sure they don't work, but it's like, look what I got from the exhibitor hall. Number 4, live out of a suitcase for the next 3 days. Why not? Number 3, wear a name tag. If you live with anyone else, claim you've been wearing this name tag for the past 19 months. See what happens. Number 2, have a line for the restrooms at breaks. And number 1, glare at the people from that other conference who are in the hallways or outside at breaks. It'll just be like a real event at that point. So the chat's horribly quiet. I don't know if that was funny or if I'm tanking badly, but I hope I'm entertaining at least one of you. When people say, hey, who's your favorite researcher? Who's your favorite scientist? Who's your favorite doctor? One of my favorite doctors of all times, pretty sure he's real, Dr. Indiana Jones. And he had some really important messages about hidden treasures. In one movie, he said, X never marks the spot. He later found that that was not true. But I kind of, that statement of archaeology is about this dig, it's about this quest, it's about for looking for these lost things. That's what I wanted to do to try and set this up. So in no particular order, I tried to pick my 10 favorite hidden treasures that have implications for us in prevention. Some of these you may know, some of these you may be surprised by. Dr. Jones said, nothing shocks me, I'm a scientist, but I do think that we get shocked sometimes by scientific findings. Number 10, 9, and 8 are early applications of the balanced placebo design. Some people say when I drink, I get more funny, I get more outgoing. Some people say when I'm down, I drink. Some people say when I drink, I get angry, I get aggressive. There's research that has looked exactly at this phenomenon, and it tells a pretty consistent story with relevance to prevention. Here's Dr. Jones drinking to cope with a monkey, which don't do that. But number 10, this is from Alan Marlatt. I do what I do today because of Alan. He was my advisor in graduate school. I know for a fact he was very, very proud that this article got so much attention. Here's this article from 48 years ago, still as relevant today as it was 48 years ago. It was named a Citation Classic. It was named by Alcohol Health and Research World as a seminal article in alcohol research. It's an article that explains kind of what we understand about alcohol, about addictive behaviors, and so on. What Alan said was, look, if what's keeping someone in recovery, if what's allowing someone to maintain sobriety if what's preventing a relapse is someone saying and saying there's strict adherence to a disease model, then bless that person. We don't want to get in the way of that. Yet he said, how many people who have one sip does that turn into 10 drinks? Because they're being told by their therapist, by a treatment provider, by society at large, that one drink's gonna turn into 10, that it's gonna kick off this loss of control drinking. Alan said that could be physiological, but it could be up here. And he said there's a way to do that. He identified and recruited men who met criteria for alcohol dependence, who were no longer trying to maintain sobriety. They were back to drinking. And he had them sign a consent form that said, if you give me alcohol at some point, I give permission for that. They were told, we're gonna have you participate in a taste study, which may involve sampling alcohol. None of that was true. They wanted to find out who drank in a loss of control way. They said, we're gonna give you in a really, really, really big beaker, a vodka and tonic, or we're gonna give you tonic water. And we want you to taste rate 3 different drinks. The vodka and tonics, they were told it was Smirnoff, Petrushka, and brand X, which I think was just Smirnoff again. I think that's pretty cool. The tonic water, they told them Canada Dry, Schweppes, or brand X. All they said was, after you take a sip, we want you to rate how bitter it is, how strong it is, watery, sweet, and so on. Feel free to sample as much of each beverage as you need. What did they want to see? They wanted to see who pounded, who drank the most as a function of what they expected to get. What Dr. Marlatt said is, let's be creative. Prior to Dr. Marlatt, this side existed of placebo research. You could tell people, we're going to give you a drug, give it to them, or give them a placebo. In medication research, it's often a sugar pill. What did Dr. Marlatt do in a very innovative way? He added this side. What if we tell people they're not drinking? In fact, give them none, or for others, actually give them alcohol. Did an independent study to find out how many parts vodka you have to add to how many parts tonic water. Put a lot of lime in there, have people not be able to tell there's alcohol in the drink. So remember, you've got people that all are over 21, they all do drink, they all meet criteria for alcohol dependence, or in quotes, alcoholism. They all signed a consent form that said, if you give me alcohol, I give permission for this. This group is told, we're gonna have you taste rate 3 different types of alcohol. What'd they give them? 3 different types of alcohol. How much did they drink? On average, 22 ounces before they said, I've had enough. That's a lot, right? If all you're doing is taste rating, that's a lot. Yet they were drinking until they said, I'm good, and then moved on to the next drink. There you go. The group that was told they were getting no alcohol, just tonic water, and in fact, got tonic water, they drank 10.94 ounces. The group that was told they were getting alcohol, but got nothing. It was a placebo, looked like these people. The group that didn't know they were drinking but were, looked like the folks in the lower right. There was no main effect for what people got. People that got alcohol didn't drink any differently than the people that didn't. What was the main effect? What people expected. People that thought they were drinking drank more. Not only did they drink more, they drank more per sip, they drank an overall amount more, and they even estimated the drink was stronger. These folks, they were like, wow, good job, bartender, even though there was nothing in the drink. I don't want to get all woo-woo about how powerful the mind is. The mind is really powerful. So Dr. Marlatt said, I am not discounting the relevance of physiological factors, and I hope no one ever misunderstands that. And physiology absolutely is part of loss of control drinking. But what I want to highlight is the role that cognitive factors play. If you're working with a client or patient who says, yeah, I guess if I have one drink, it's probably going to turn into 15, then it's probably going to turn into 15. So our role in messaging around relapse prevention becomes noteworthy. We like to invent words in psychology, and we talk about a biopsychosocial model that acknowledges addiction's complicated. And there are physiological factors, there are psychological factors, there are environmental factors. Dr. Marlatt, moving on to number 9, said, well, so how much of these social effects from alcohol really are due to alcohol versus this belief? And he said, wouldn't it be cool if we could study aggression? The question is, ethically, how do you do that? You can't have people be in a study and have people actually hurt people. So he said we could run an analog study. Think of the word analogy. It's analogous to behavior in the real world. And he said, I'm going to do a 2 by 2 by 2 design where I alter what people expect to get, alcohol or a placebo, what they get, alcohol or nothing, and then whether they're provoked or not. He recruited men who identified as heavy social drinkers, felt like they could hold their liquor. And he said, this is not going to be a sip what you want. This is going to be a finish the drink in front of you. People were recruited for a study where they were told, we're going to test the effects of alcohol on personality, learning, and various other behaviors. None of that was true. They said, everybody in this study is going to get a drink, whether they're getting alcohol or not, because we want to hold everything constant. If we give you alcohol, do you give permission for that? Everyone said yes, sign a consent form. Then people were randomly assigned to one of the 4 conditions in the balanced placebo design. If they were told they're getting alcohol and got it, they got a drink that got them to 0.1% over the legal limit in 2021. If they were told they were getting no alcohol but actually got it, they got to 0.1. Everyone that got alcohol got to a 0.1 blood alcohol level. That's a big dose. They did a series of psychological tests followed by a tracing task. And then they went in the waiting room where they were joined by another man. This man worked for the researcher. In half the instances, the man just sat there, said nothing. But in half of them, the person working for the researcher laid into the actual participant, started laughing and said, wow, where'd you learn how to draw? Like, did you have to cheat to get your way into college? Basically challenged the general intelligence of the other man. He provoked him. The experimenter then said, all right, we got one last thing for both of you to do. One of you is going to be the teacher. One of you is going to be the learner. Why don't you, the actual participant, draw first? Both tags said teacher. Guaranteed the real participant would be the teacher. We want you, the person that just drank one of 4 different things, to teach him, the person working for the researcher, a series of word pairs. Moon, stars, winter, cold, cheese, And then we're going to see how well he learned. Every time he got it right, cool. Every time he got it wrong, we want you to punish him. So come on over here to the shock machine. There was no real shock machine. Those of you who took intro to psych and remember Stanley Milgram's research, this was not Milgram's research. No one had to do anything. No one was told the experiment had to continue. But what they said is, every time he gets it wrong, you get to determine how intense the shock is, and you get to determine how long to hold the button down for, which is an analog for aggression. It's an analog for how hard are you going to hit that person and how many punches you're going to throw. No one actually gets hurt, but here's this great way to measure aggression. So I want to ask you, and I'm going to invite you to put it in the chat. Who do you think behaved most aggressively? Who do you think gave shocks that were of the greatest intensity and longer duration? You can see there were people that expected alcohol, got it, provoked or not provoked, expected alcohol, didn't get it, provoked, not provoked. And then the flip side, didn't know they were drinking and actually were, provoked, not provoked, or didn't expect alcohol, in fact got none, provoked, not provoked. Who gave shots that were of the greatest intensity and longer duration? Keep that in mind when we get to the next study. So far, no one's playing the game show. I want to thank the one person that's playing the game show. Those who were told they're going to get alcohol and didn't get it. Interesting hypothesis. This blows my mind every time I look at this. And I've been looking at this for over 40 years. The people that thought they were getting alcohol, got alcohol, they were pretty aggressive. The group that didn't think they were getting alcohol, in fact, got none, much milder shocks. The group that thought they were getting alcohol, got none, looked just like the people over here. The people that didn't know they were drinking, but were, looked like the lower right-hand corner. Look at this. This person thought they were drinking. If you can see my cursor, the arrow, weren't, and they weren't even provoked, but they nevertheless behaved more aggressively than the person that didn't know they were drinking actually were provoked. There was no main effect for whether people were provoked or not. There was no main effect for what people got. What was the main effect? People that thought they were drinking behaved more aggressively. There was, again, not even a significant interaction. Those that thought they were drinking gave more intense shocks, gave shocks of longer duration. Look how much we are doing in our communities around violence prevention, around sexual assault prevention, you name it. What people say about drinking matters. When someone says, ooh, I've had a day, I dare someone to push me tonight, they're probably going to be aggressive. And so when we look at even people go, well, sorry, I was drinking. When people say, is that being used as an excuse? The science shows that when you control for what people actually get versus what they think, those interpersonal or social effects seem to be more due to what's up here. So then Dr. Marlatt said, well, what about when people say, I get more funny, outgoing, talkative, flirty, you name it? How much of that really comes from alcohol? Because a buzz, that's real. Reaction time impairment, real. Motor coordination impact, nausea, all of these are legitimate pharmacological effects of alcohol. But he said, what if we test these social things? He recruited college students, all over 21, all who drink, all who signed consent forms, and said, if you give me alcohol, I'm good with that. They were told, we're going to have you hang out with other college students. We're either going to give you alcohol or alcohol-free drinks. We just want to see how people interact in social situations. They asked them, how does alcohol affect you in a good way socially? They tell them. How does it affect you in a not good way? They tell them. What if you're at a party not drinking? What's that like for you? People say boring, awkward, quiet, shy. Then they're randomly assigned to conditions, and they're brought to Guthrie Hall, room 242. What is Guthrie Hall, room 242? We call it the Behavioral Alcohol Research Laboratory, the bar lab. This is the bar lab. It looks like a legit bar. It's awesome. You walk in, tables and chairs all throughout the bar lab. Here's your view at the end of the room. But all these things that are in this picture I took very much make it a lab. The mirror to a mirror. There's a room behind there. The Dos Equis sign, camera. Area where the two X's intercept has been hollowed out. If you can see my cursor up here, there's a hidden mic in the ceiling. That's one of 6. It's a great way to observe behavior in a non-intrusive way. Upper left-hand corner, they're told they're getting vodka and tonics or beer. What do we give them? Vodka and tonics and beer. What do we see? Nothing magical happens here. It looks like a bunch of college students drinking. The volume of the group increases, people interact a lot more, but you need this group for comparison's sake. Clear all them out, bring in the lower right-hand corner. We tell them, we're gonna give you no alcohol. They get non-alcoholic beer or tonic water, with or without a lime wedge, depending if we had money or not. State school, what do we see here? Also not that different. It's a much quieter group, much less interaction. At best, it looks like a bunch of people who don't know each other who are asked to hang out and drink water together. Where do you see the cool stuff happen? This group, they're told they're getting alcohol. We give them alcohol-free drinks. The vodka and tonic is tonic water with a lot of lime in it, vodka right around the rim of the glass. The beer are brought to them in pitchers of pre-poured blend of non-alcoholic beers. What do we see at this group? At the 20-minute mark, coders trying to tell the difference between this group and this group can't tell the difference between these two groups. Down here, the volume of the group is increased. People are interacting a lot more. People are shoving tables together and playing drinking games with water. By the 40-minute mark, not only did you see some people report physical stuff, but it was the social things. Someone surfaced as kind of the stand-up comedian of the group. Someone surfaced as kind of the loud ringleader of the group. We saw people flirting. We saw more drinking games. We even saw times where people would push tables to the side and danced. The upper right-hand corner, they're told they're getting no alcohol, but they actually get it. They don't act any different. The physical effects kick in, but they blame it on other stuff. This is a way less entertaining group to watch, but it's almost more impressive because these are all people that say, oh, you give me alcohol, I got this, 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 and this happening. They got it. None of that great social stuff happened. 20-minute mark, everyone's sitting around going, when's this dumb study gonna get bored? Gonna get done, looking really bored. By the 40-minute mark, they get tired, but they blame it on a long day of work. They flush, but they blame it on the temperature of the room. They get clumsy. They're like, sorry, clumsy. They don't act differently. Dr. Marlatt's research showed alcohol does a lot of stuff, but the social or interpersonal things we get are more due to our expectations than what's coming from the cup in our hand. Why does this matter from prevention? Guess what one of the biggest predictors of drinking heavily is? Having a high number of positive outcome expectancies. If someone says, I love drinking, it makes me feel this, they're more likely to drink and drink heavily. Why else? If this is information that helps a non-drinking adolescent, young adult that you're working with stay non-drinking, then more power to them. Because people who don't drink often hear, well, you should, you'll be funnier, you'll be more social. Not according to a single published study ever. And number 3, if someone's considering stopping, but they're like, yeah, but if I stop, what if I miss out on all the good social stuff I get from alcohol? We have no evidence it's coming from the alcohol to start with. I hope that makes sense. Number 7, could you do this with cannabis? Yes, Dr. Jane Metrick at Brown University showed you can do this 2x2 balanced placebo design, but it's a lot of work. So researchers have instead started just doing an expectancy challenge. What if we tell people they're getting weed, but we give them nothing? Laughlin and colleagues did a brilliant study where they recruited people that use cannabis at least once per month, up to multiple times per day. As it turned out, all but 2 people in their study used at least once per week, up to multiple times per day. They said, you're going to be in a study where we give you an edible that either has no THC, low THC, or high THC. Do you give permission for that? They all sign a consent form and say yes, and that sets in motion the ability to do this. They started priming people to believe they're going to receive a substance. They were told you can't use anything at least 8 hours before you get here. Depending on which condition you're in, you may be here up to 6 hours. People were checked into cubicles where they were told, we're going to have you rate music and comedy clips, color designs, and compute math problems. They walked into the room, they opened up an envelope and said, well, you're in the high THC condition. Everyone applauded. They said, I'm going to give you an edible. Be careful. This is strong stuff. What'd they give them? Hemp pops. Hemp pops are not psychoactive. There's no THC, no CBD. They're made with glucose syrup, citric acid, sugar, natural flavors, and colors number 2 and number 5, which are the 2 most delicious colors. They said, we want you to rate how high you feel. We want you to rate your mood. And you're all seasoned, experienced people with cannabis. You know there can be a lag with edibles. So we're going to have you rate again at the 30-minute mark, again at the 60-minute mark. What'd they find? There was a statistically significant decrease in negative mood, even though people got nothing at all. There was a statistically significant increase in people reporting that they felt high with a lollipop. Does cannabis do stuff? Yes. Does it do everything it's credited with? Absolutely not. And like with other substances, more research needs to be done looking at placebo effects. People go, hold up. What about CBD though? I see all these signs saying CBD does this, CBD does that. This was a brilliant study by Arndt and DeWitt, who said, what if we have people be their own control groups? Ethically, we can't take people with a diagnosed anxiety issue and take their medication away. But what do we know about us as people? We get upset, we get anxious. I'm super anxious right now. They said, what if we induce and introduce negative emotional stimuli? What if we induce unwanted affect, unwanted mood? What if we induce anxiety in people? And on 4 separate occasions, do this, and on 4 separate occasions, have them take something. They all signed a consent form that said, I agree to take something that could include CBD. It's a double-blind experiment. What does that mean? You eliminate expectancies. The person taking it has no idea what they're taking. The person bringing it to them, just in case they're tipping their hat, don't know what they're bringing to them. What do they give them? 4 conditions, again, all spaced out over time. You can see in the screenshot of the article, they either gave them 300, 600, or a stunning 900 milligrams of CBD orally or a sugar pill. When you eliminate expectancies, what did CBD do? Nothing. I hope no one mishears me. I'm not saying CBD does nothing, period. I'm going to talk about one of my 10 hidden treasures from Allen and colleagues. Yet, oral CBD, quoting verbatim from the study, does not alter responses to emotional stimuli or produce anxiolytic-like, what does that mean? Anxiety-reducing-like effects in healthy human subjects. Why do I say this? We can all agree it's not been a very fun last 19 months. They've been very stressful. People are really, really anxious. And for those of you who work in counseling, for those of you who work in therapy, for those of you who work in treatment, for those of you that do coping skills as part of prevention, therapy works, counseling works, treatment works, coping skills work. We want people getting connected with services that work, not products making the claim of effectiveness when the science just is not there. Number 5, tolerance and withdrawal. I don't want to force my own anxiety on you. I kind of do, but this keeps me up at night. As we resume school in the fall, this makes me hate Halloween. This makes me hate spring break. This makes me not love 21st birthdays. This is the craziest article I've seen in my career. I started grad school 30 years ago, this fall. I've been very mushy about that. 30 years ago this fall, clearly when I was 11 years old, which is not true. But in a 30-year experience of reading articles, this is the most mind-blowing article I've ever read. What do we know about tolerance? It's the ability to hold your liquor. It doesn't mean you get to a lower blood alcohol level. It doesn't mean you get less drunk. It means it takes more of a substance for someone to show the expected effects. Someone with tolerance has the same blood alcohol level as someone without, who's the same sex, same weight, who drank the same amount over the same amount of time. But Siegel and Ramos said, what if we've been wrong? That it's, what if when we say it's all due to physiology, what if it's not? What if it's way more due to environment than we realize, such that someone's ability to hold their liquor could disappear in a split second and potentially kill them? They reminded us of Pavlov. Pavlov had a dog. Pavlov put food in front of the dog. Dog salivates. So far, not an awesome study. Put food in front of the dog, ring a bell. Dog looks at you funny. But if you do that 40 times, now you ring the bell, the dog salivates. The bell becomes a conditioned stimulus that can elicit salivation as a conditioned response. Jump forward to human beings and drinking. Imagine someone only drinks in their house, for example, and they only drink in the same room in their house, and they only drink in their favorite relaxing chair in their house. If the only time they're in that room, if the only time they sit in that chair, if the only time a glass is in their hand that smells and tastes like that drink is to drink alcohol, then functionally, how is that room, how is that chair, how is that glass any different than that bell to Pavlov's dog? They're not. They're cues associated with the presentation of alcohol to the body. Why does that matter? In physiology, we know there's something called the opponent process theory that says shove the body one way, the body shoves back the other. Jack up the heat, we sweat. Make it really cold, we shiver. If you have a drug like alcohol that has a central nervous system depressant, slows the body down. If someone says, I know to call it a night if I feel this amount of a depressant, they walk in the room and drink, slows the central nervous system down. Walk in the room and drink, drink, drink. In time, walk in that room, all those cues say, heads up, we're about to get a depressant. Ever so slightly, the central nervous system speeds up. Ever so slightly, the central nervous system makes an anticipatory response in the direction opposite the way the drug acts. Scientists call this a conditioned, brought on by cues, compensatory, body's literally trying to compensate response. What's the catch? Here's how much the person's been using the last month. They now drink exactly that same amount. Do they feel it in the same way? Nope. So what do? Keep on drinking. Do they feel it now? Yes. Do they look any different? No. They're holding their liquor. They're developing tolerance. But if we have them blow a breathalyzer, they will blow a higher blood alcohol level here than they did here, because it took more alcohol to get to this subjective feeling. Siegel and Ramos said this can continue over time such that a really strong amount of tolerance is developed. Scientists said, this is brilliant, prove it. And a researcher in Spain did, and I'll tell you right now, I don't think our field's ever been the since. Gutierrez Cebollada said, here's the problem with alcohol. There's lots of cues. What if a cue for me is cracking into a beer, but I also drink LaCroix at lunch? That sounds the same. What if I always drink with that person over there, but I also see them at work? Those cues aren't unique. So the person said, what if we take a drug where the cue is really, really clear? Heroin. If you've got a syringe coming towards your body, that's a cue that says, heads up, the body's about to receive a massive dose of an opiate. in cutting-edge medical research in bodies with a long-standing history of heroin use and therefore tolerance, you have the injection of heroin take place. As an opiate, it predictably slows down pulse, blood pressure, galvanic skin response, respiration rate, heart rate, you name it. Do it again, not a fluke. Do it again, clearly not a fluke. Fourth and final time, you administer a placebo. Saline solution. Don't do this, but if you inject saline, nothing happens. It's the base of IVs. The control group for all the vaccine trials was saline. It's a neutral substance to the human body. But think about this theory. If the last 100 times a syringe came toward the body, injection occurred, and a drug entered the body that massively slowed down the central nervous system, if this theory holds, Kale, I'm going to have you be the whole audience. I'm going to look at you and have you gesture with your hands. If this theory holds, if a syringe full of saline approaches the central nervous system, if this theory holds, what should the central nervous system do? I'm looking at Kale. To either point up or point down. Point up. Good. You beat the last group of students I presented to. Kale, you're free to go. And I think you should earn continuing education for this. Exactly. The body's going to prepare to receive the drug by speeding up. What's the catch? There's no active drug in the syringe. Whatever you measure is going to be the central nervous system's conditioned compensatory response. And as Kale predicted, body goes off the wall the opposite direction. The body prepared to receive the drug never came. We can flat out see this happen. Researchers then said, well, guess what we just invented? Withdrawal symptoms. Imagine someone has decided, I need to quit. But I like you guys. I want to go to the party we've been going to for the last year. They walk in the room. What happens? Body prepares to receive the drug. How do they feel? Shaky, jittery, on edge, going through withdrawal. I love this quote. Siegel said in a different article, citing this very poetic article in a statement from 1958, the dead drug leaves a ghost behind. At certain hours, it haunts the house. Siegel said exactly. The ghost is the conditioned compensatory response. It haunts the house when confronted with conditioned stimuli. What's our job? In relapse prevention, in intervention, in treatment, we need to appreciate how conditioning may be used to exercise the ghost. How cool is that? In Connecticut, Judy and Ned Cooney did a study in a VA medical center with people who'd been smoking for decades. They said they randomly assigned half the people in the program, in a smoking cessation program, to rearrange the furniture in their homes. People were like, that's a dumb assignment. Think about what that did. It altered their view. It altered their environment. It altered their cues. The people who rearranged the furniture in their home reported less withdrawals, less craving, and had greater success with tobacco cessation than people that returned to the same environment. That's a game changer if you work with people trying to move toward recovery or sobriety. But why does this keep me up at night? Researchers then said, oh my God, what if what we've been calling an overdose, a poisoning, has less to do with someone having a huge dose one day? And instead, what if they use the same amount they've always used, but around a completely brand new set of cues, most crudely and simply measured as a brand new environment? In a new environment, what's missing? All the cues that would make this conditioned compensatory response happen. How much has the person been pounding? This. In a new environment, isn't it conceivable that that is what an alcohol poisoning is? That is what a drug overdose is. A study in Michigan looked at 61 consecutive drug overdose admissions into a hospital setting to see if they had anything in common. Anything in common. What did 60 of the 61 have in common? They were in a new environment. That is terrifying. Siegel uses the word fail. Tolerance fails to follow us to a new set of cues. One example that gives me goosebumps and breaks my heart every time I describe it. 17-year-old guy, his dad had cancer. The son was giving the dad morphine injections for pain 4 times a day. The dad had handled over 100 doses of the morphine and had handled all the adjustments to the dose that had been made by the prescribing provider as he developed tolerance. So heartbreakingly sadly, to father, son, and prescribing provider, all 100+ doses had been given in the bedroom with the dad lying down, curtains drawn, dimly lit room. One day, for whatever reason, the dad was in the living room. Lights on bright, TV on, curtains open, dad sitting upright. Son says, "Dad, it's time for your shot." Gave the dad the shot, and the dad died of a drug overdose. That kills me. What changed? The cues that said, "Here comes the substance," disappeared. So why does, I just want to say one other thing. There's so many cues. It could be an environment. It could be a person. It could be a time. Siegel showed it can even be taste. If you have a favorite drink, if you take a sip and you're like, there we go, that's a cue. Siegel showed that when students had a drink that was familiar, one that looked, tasted, smelled like beer, they exhibited greater tolerance than when a drink they'd never had before. A drink they've never had before, even though it got them to the same blood alcohol level, subjectively hit them harder. So Siegel talked about the situational specificity of tolerance, such that if people drink in a manner divorced from usual stimuli, the effects are enhanced. Since this article came out, this has been proven to hold with cannabis, amphetamines, cocaine, opiates, you name it. If it has a central nervous system stimulant or depressant effect, this holds. So why does this keep me up at night in the fall? Guess what our campuses represent? Incoming brand new students, a brand new environment. The tolerance they had at home will not follow them to campus. Think about what this means for a spring break road trip, brand new environment. 21 run, bar for the first time, new environment. Halloween, we decorate our environments to look different. Everyone looks like a pirate. That's pretty cool. They get unique drinks. Students studying abroad, coming back to campus. Listen, if you work not with young adults, if you work with the general adult population, someone that goes to a bar or a restaurant for the first time in 19 months, if they drink the same amount they've been drinking the last 19 months, it will hit them harder. So think about what this means for bystanders. If everyone's like, why is that person freaking out? They always drink that much. That much in a new environment could be devastating. If someone says, I'm going to be taking this amazing trip, and they admit that they have tolerance and they always drink X number of drinks, cut that number of drinks in half. It could hit them just as hard, if not harder. If at this stage in the presentation, I'm meeting your needs and expectations, I'm so glad. If I'm not, I'm going to still try and hit a home run with the final three. I do want to say this. I have a colleague that does research on Twitter who says, is what people tweet about their drinking, does it hold with their actual drinking? And she reached out to me and said, hey, Jason, can you make me some joke slides about Twitter? I was like, sure, that's why I'm a professor. So I made this for my colleague. If Twitter existed in the early days of psychology, it would have looked something like this. Pavlov. So does anyone have any idea how to get dog saliva out of a rug? I sure appreciate it. Hashtag should have put down plastic. Hashtag should have bought a fish. Pavlov's dog. You did this to me, bro. Quit complaining. What are you going to do? Cry to your mom again? Hashtag always hungry when the clock chimes. Hashtag start researching cats. Freud. Hey, did someone say mom? Damn, sorry, my bad. Hashtag quit talking about your mom. So not a historically accurate timeline, but hopefully fairly funny. I will say, if you thought to yourself, wow, that was really innovative use of a stylus, you'd be right. First time my stylus shot out on my laptop, I'm like, what is this thing? And my friend said, you can use it to draw stuff. And now I just can't be stopped. So I drew this orca for everybody in Kansas. I thought that was enjoyable. Here's a velociraptor because dinosaurs are cool. And I made this octopus because the ocean. Number 4, I covered the relationship between high potency THC and outcomes. It's technically for A, B, C, and D. Wow, this is the most silent chat I've ever been a part of. So either everyone's doing laundry or I'm tanking miserably. But I do hope this is meeting your needs and expectations. This is technically for A, B, C, and D. Here's why. Brain front on the left, back of the brain's on the right. Where does THC bind in the brain? All over the place. What causes the high? Look at the reward pathway. THC binds here. THC has a massive impact on parts of the brain. And what do we know? It is getting so much more concentrated than it's ever been. El Soli and colleagues showed that when you hear about people in the 70s that say that they smoked grass, it's because it was practically grass. It was 1.5% THC. In the 80s, 2 to 3% THC. May all of your retirement portfolios grow like this. Look at this increase from 4%, and then we run out in 2014. Well, you're in luck. The summer, they extended it. When people say it's just weed It stopped being just weed a long time ago. Yet, when you look at what do scientists consider the strong stuff, high potency cannabis, it's anything over 10% THC. Keep that number in mind. What have we seen in my state? We legalized for non-medical or recreational purposes in 2012. One store, they gave, just as an example, their data. The average potency in the US when this report came out, 13.18%. In Seattle, smokable bud or flower, 21.62%. Hash oils, concentrates, what people use for dabbing, nationwide was over 55%. We're pushing 72% at that store in Seattle, as an example. That's one store. You don't need that one store. What have we seen in Washington? Smart and colleagues followed sales in my state. What's that little blue area? THC under 10%. What's everything else? High potency cannabis. Brick red, 10 to 15, green, 15 to 20, purple's over 20. This came out at the end of 2020. It showed that in Colorado, 95.91% of their market is high potency cannabis. In California, it's only 0.01 off. They have a bigger slice of the pie. It's 10 to 15, but it's nevertheless high potency. In my state, it's over 97%. When people say it's natural, my friends, this doesn't occur in nature. Potencies like this take work. It takes intentional extraction of concentrates. It takes intentional breeding of high potency, created high potency strains. So why does this matter? DeForty and colleagues showed the more people use high potency cannabis, anything over 10%, the greater the likelihood of developing schizophrenia, psychosis, a psychotic disorder. If we know someone uses weed every day, it's over 10%, their odds compared to people who don't use it all of developing psychosis go up 5 to 6 times compared to people who don't use. This article showed increased risk of addiction and more generalized anxiety disorder for adolescents and young adults who use cannabis over 10% THC. Out of Canada, edibles, extracts, topicals, more problematic cannabis use, more cannabis use disorder, more mental health disorders. I was honored to be one of 9 scientists who worked on a consensus statement. Our state said something's changed. And only since you're all state employees, if we can get 9 researchers from the University of Washington and Washington State University to agree, will we let you publish this? This will be in your handouts. There's a 20-page report. If you're like 20 pages, there's a 2-page version. There's even slides you can use. What did it make very clear? Young people are really vulnerable. And the risk of developing cannabis use disorder addiction, particularly among young people, goes up. Number 3, looking at science on medical cannabis use. If you have a loved one, a family member with a gravely disabling or potentially lethal condition that's had medical cannabis recommended and are using as recommended, then bless that person. That is not who I'm talking about. But I worry about the 18-year-old that's really, really depressed and isn't going to talk to a counselor, refuses a referral to a health center provider because they say, I just want to use medical marijuana instead. My phone taunts me and reminds me of when I used to be able to go places. Today, it's like, here's your memories from 3 years ago. I'm like, thanks, phone. But 3 years ago, I was in Canada getting ready to present at a conference that was held 48 hours before they legalized nationwide for non-medical or recreational purposes. What were all their medical providers saying? Wow, we have got to slow down on medical cannabis. What do we know about any medication? You want the benefits to outweigh the side effects or consequences. You want to be rid of addiction potential. You want to know, did people evaluated the medication in randomized controlled trials versus people self-selecting into a condition with no control group? And finally, are there effective treatments out there? I saw these headlines. I went to the original article. If this is not a visible treasure, it certainly counts as a super hidden treasure. If you're like 10 pages, I don't have time to read 10 pages, then read figure 1. They said, hey, can I get permission? Can I get a card for medical marijuana? If yes, that's what they're asking for. Is it for neuropathic pain, palliative and end-of-life pain, chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, or spasticity due to multiple sclerosis or spinal cord injury? If no, we're done. We're not giving it for depression, anxiety, neck pain, back pain, headaches, sleep. How come? The science is not there. The benefits do not outweigh the numerous consequences. it's addictive, and there are therapies and treatments that work. Only if yes. Have they tried traditional therapies or treatments with no success? If no, go back to the drawing board. If yes, they say you can consider a medical cannabinoid as an adjunct, but they say heads up, people don't smoke the medicine. And if you continue to appreciate the stylish drawings, I made the Sasquatch, which is really pretty impressive. Here's a squirrel. I'm very proud of this. And I drew this yesterday for today's presentation. Separating reported motives for cannabis use from management of withdrawal. Honestly, I worry about how many people report medical use that are really addicted and just managing withdrawal. Is marijuana addictive? Yes. In the DSM-5, there are clear criteria for cannabis use disorder. There's even clear criteria for cannabis withdrawal. My good friend Christine Lee asked incoming first-year students, tell us why you use marijuana. And they said things like, I like getting high, gives you something to do with my friends, helps when I'm bored, makes things more fun, music sounds better, it's cool, it helps me celebrate. But they also said, it helps me relax, helps me sleep, cope when I'm depressed, relieves stress, helps when my appetite sucks, lets me reduce anxiety, alleviates physical pain, helps when I have a headache. What are the criteria for cannabis withdrawal? Keeping this list in mind? Well, it's basically this list. Anxiety, sleep problems, appetite problems, depressed mood, and headaches. If you've got someone you're working with that says, no, 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 I know marijuana helps my anxiety. If you say, well, how do you know? They say, I use weed every day. And last week I ran out for 3 days. My anxiety was brutal. I felt horrible. Couldn't sleep at all. Got my hands on weed again. My anxiety got better. I could sleep. See, it helps. That's not marijuana helping anxiety and sleep issues. That's resuming substance use, making withdrawal symptoms stop. In that instance, that's a case of managing addiction, not of managing anxiety or sleep. The opportunity for patient education, the opportunity to change the narrative in the work we do in prevention. I hope it was abundantly clear when I showed you young people are very vulnerable. Anything you can do, anything we can do in prevention to keep abstainers abstaining, to delay the initiation of use is huge. And finally, examining alcohol-related risk factors for suicide, referencing a hidden treasure within the treasure, because this literally is a hidden treasure that cites another treasure. Another Indiana Jones movie that had a hidden treasure within the treasure was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where we had Dr. Jones's father, played by Sean Connery. This is a must read. It is 20 years old. And why is it a must read? It cites research that because of HIPAA, because of patient privacy, you probably could not do today. It cites more international research than I've ever seen. Hufford says, when we look at risk factors for suicide, there are distal factors, the ones that are pretty stable. Then there are ones that are much more immediate, proximal risk factors. What are the distal ones? The terminology's changed after DSM-5 came out, but it's addiction, a big part. Alcohol dependence or alcohol use disorder, alcohol dependence and comorbid psychopathology, alcohol dependence and negative life events, citing research that, again, probably could not be done today because of privacy. Over 1/4 of those with an alcohol use disorder who died by suicide experienced interpersonal loss within 6 weeks of their death. What have we seen in the last 19 months? More loss in our country than in any time in our history. If you're working with someone who discloses a relationship that has ended, that discloses the loss of a close personal friend or family member, and they're in recovery, they're working with you around relapse prevention, we want to keep our fingers in the pulse of how they're doing. Those that are alcohol dependent are at greater risk for suicide, not when they're in recovery, but during periods of active drinking. When we look at proximal factors, suicidal behavior during alcohol intoxication, this, my friends, is not a typo. This was done out of the US. Consumption of over 10 standard drinks increases the risk for suicide attempts 90 times compared to people who don't drink. When someone says out loud, I'm going to get hammered tonight, we worry. And those acute, high risk, high episode, heavy intensity moments are actually more risky and greater risk than the person who routinely or habitually drinks heavily. But if I go back, alcohol intoxication, psychological distress, alcohol intoxication, aggression, alcohol expectancies, and then finally, alcohol intoxication and constricted thinking. What is the treasure within the treasure? Alcohol Myopia by Steele and Josephs. This article is as relevant today as it was 30 plus years ago. And it explains how alcohol affects decision-making. I wear contacts because I'm myopic. It means nearsighted. It doesn't mean we get nearsighted when we drink, but the cues we attend to do. There are impelling cues that tell you, let's do this. This party's fun. This person I'm talking to is cute. These drinks are good. Inhibiting cues that tell you, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this. Phones that are out and pointed at me. I have a test tomorrow. I got to be up early tomorrow. Steele and Joseph showed the more and more we drink, the more it narrows our attention to the most salient internal and environmental cues. Which of these two are most salient? Impelling. That's what it means for our inhibitions to go down. People use that phrase all the time. I do not think they know what it means. Well, I was out drinking and my inhibitions lowered. What's your understanding of how that works? Well, the inhibitions lower, right? But what does that mean? It means this. These cues are here. We just don't pay attention to them. Someone when sober says, I would never drink and drive. If they've had a lot to drink, they're cold, they're tired, they just want to go home. What's the impelling cue? I want to go. There's my keys. Look, there's my car. What's the inhibiting cue? I'm not walking very well. And at least 3 of my friends have tried to get my keys from me. What did Hufford explain? Someone who's seeing a counselor, someone who's struggling, someone who has the fleeting thought, what if I ended my life tonight? They're flooded with the inhibiting cues. I could call the crisis line. This could get better. I wouldn't do that to my family. I would miss my dog. If someone's had a lot to drink and they have the impelling cue, I want to feel anything other than what I'm feeling right now. Those inhibiting cues are there, but if they're over 0.06% blood alcohol level, they're just not attending to them. Hufford explained the immediate and usually painful aspects of experience take on disproportionate weight in the delicate balance between choosing life over death among those contemplating suicide. And the alcohol intoxication acts to interrupt inhibition conflict through myopia, leading to more excessive responses that would have occurred when sober. This led Laurie Davidson in her work with the Suicide Prevention Resource Center to say, hey, you want to be a community that does good suicide prevention? Then do good alcohol prevention, because alcohol prevention is suicide prevention. So why is it so important to advance science? Dr. Jones explains, fortune and glory, kid, fortune and glory, which is why you all do what you do. Of course, I'm kidding. I saw this quote that feels a little intense. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. It's not like something you would read on Twitter where someone's slamming someone else. I saw a softened version of this quote. Without data, all we have are opinions. It is mind-blowing to me how often we try and disseminate science and people just destroy it. They rip on it. And it's like whoever gets the bigger zinger in on Twitter, on social media, kind of wins, right? But a lot of these arguments are emotional and we can make them empirical. The data start to tell a fairly compelling story. I hope none of you in prevention ever question for a second the value of the work you do. It matters in a big, big way. I think all data matter and all data tell a story. So how do we translate findings to the real world? Tell the story. Make the findings digestible and clear without being too simplistic. Provide all citations and references to boost legitimacy and credibility. Well, you know, science says, prove it. Show me the science. We can do that. If you're like, I'm not really a researcher though, what do I do? There's ways to make this work. I do think looking at parent meetings, town hall meetings, peer educators, expert, screening, brief intervention, referral to treatment. When you screen for cannabis use disorder and people are like, why are you possibly asking about that? Well, because cannabis is addictive. And a lot of what people see us for could be caused or made worse by their cannabis use. Not only will you connect people who are struggling to services that work, that screening alone is a patient education opportunity. I would say if you are involved in science, there we go. If you're not, work with colleges, work with universities, work with researchers, scientists, so many other potential sources to partner. No, the schools are going to be willing to do that. This is my last slide. It comes from the College Alcohol Intervention Matrix, and it reviews over 60 individually and environmentally focused strategies for reducing risks on college campuses. And it says some of the most effective strategies are carried out in the communities and states surrounding the campuses, such as enforcing the minimum legal drinking age. Campus leaders can be influential in bringing about off-campus environmental change that protects students. How do we do this? Partner with leaders and coalitions in your community and state. My friends, those of us on college campuses are being told, go find community partners. We're out here. So what we've certainly learned in this virtual 19 months is that those partners don't have to be your neighbor. It could be someone from another state. It could be, a number of different options. That was a lot of slides. In fact, how many slides was that? I have to look. Let's back out and look. 113 slides. If it felt that way, my sincere apologies. If it didn't, I'm delighted that that's the case. I want to thank Kale again, both for her early morning communication with me, Crystal and Krista. I drew this and texted it to my niece. And she texted back and said, Uncle Jason, I love you, but you really need a hobby. And I've never felt more understood by an 11-year-old in my life. I work for the Center for the Study of Health and Risk Behaviors. We're on Twitter. We'd be thrilled if you followed us. If you feel compelled to tweet anything about today, we would be delighted to try and figure out how to respond or retweet it. My email address is right there, jkilmer@uw.edu. I mentioned that I will send a PDF of my slides to Kale when we're done. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, tag over to Kale, see what questions have come in, see what I can clarify for people in these final 3 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Kilmer, so much. That was an incredible presentation, well needed, and I'm so excited to share this as well, even after this. And we do have a couple comments in the chat. You are a true artistic visionary, which I have to agree. I think you should start selling your work, honestly. I think we would pay for it. I do have a question here. It looks like Ray asked more about the SBIRT, so the screening.
Yeah, I'm a big DYA person, define your acronym. So I said it at the time, screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment. Screening is universal screening. Can I get a flu shot? You do a screening. My throat's sore, you do a screening. My arm hurts, you do a screening. And it's the idea is, can we identify people that might otherwise slip through the cracks? Brief interventions are typically guided by Miller and Rolnick's motivational interviewing, and they can be brief interventions that alter trajectories and can lead to thinking about or committing to change. Referral to treatment is what it sounds like. It's getting people connected with treatment who may need something beyond a brief intervention.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying. It looks like we have about 2 minutes left here. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments that they would like to add? Please feel free to unmute, or you have a lot of great comments here in the chat.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody.
Don't see anyone unmuting. So with that, that will conclude our 2021 Douglas County Behavioral Health Prevention Summit. Thank you so much for everyone who has participated and joined us over the last few weeks. Thank you again, Dr. Kilmer, for that amazing presentation. We are
You're welcome.
So grateful.
Since the conference is ending, be sure to go out in the hallway and take all the snacks that are left and any of the free giveaways. This is your chance to load up, so take them all.
There you go. That is great advice. I will keep those 5 tips for myself as well. All right, with that, sorry, words are hard apparently. With that, we will go ahead and end. It is just about 12:59, so I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day. Please remember to fill out the evaluation link here that I will put in the chat.
I'm going to go get on another webinar. Kale, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Dr. Kilmer.